This is the next video in the Historic Ordnance series. What you are looking at is a Chinese Type 72 metallic anti-tank mine. Now, I've mentioned this mine before. This mine is a direct copy of a Soviet design from World War II that went into production immediately after World War II. I'm talking about the Soviet TM-46 series anti-tank mine. Now, looking at this mine, I have a feeling how the Chinese got a hold of it, which ones they got a hold of, and why they manufactured these. Now, if you have not seen the TM-46 video, you see on the fuse plug here, there's nothing there. It's just a piece of stamped sheet metal. That indicates that this is a copy of some of the first production runs of the Soviet TM-46. The Soviets did a change in the production after they produced a few 10,000s of mines. I couldn't find an exact number, but it was tens of thousands. They went through, looked at the mine, and they started thinking of the safety of the troops. They realized that the fuse they were using in that mine could be improved on because there was no safety feature in it. There was no safety clips, no safety pins on that fuse. So the Soviets came out with a new design, replaced the fuse well cap with a fuse that, if I remember correctly, the designation for it was the MVM. And they took the detonator, attached it to the fuse well cap, and then they had a safety pin that had to be removed to arm everything on the MVM fuse. That's not present on the Type 72, which tells me this is a copy of the initial run. Those first tens of thousands of mines that were produced. And my suspicion is the Chinese probably stole a few of them from the minefields that were separating the Soviet Union and China. For those of you that are not aware of this, the People's Republic of China and the Soviet Union were enemies for a long time. They were constantly butting heads, constantly competing against each other to be the country that was in charge of the communist world. And the Soviets considered the Chinese to be a major threat, and they stationed a lot of soldiers on the Chinese border, put in a lot of mines and a lot of fortifications just in case the Chinese would invade. And I have a feeling that's how the Chinese got a hold of this. They must have stole a couple of them from one of those protective minefields and copied them, and the version that they got a hold of was the initial run. Now, some technicals on this. Diameter is 11 inches. Height is 3 2/3 inches. Weight is 17 2/3 pounds, of which the explosive filler is 11 pounds, and it is a 50-50 mix of TNT and RDX. If I remember correctly, the name for that explosive that it came across from Russian sources was Hexol. There is two versions of this mine, the Type 72 and the Type 72 SP. Now, it's believed by deminers that the Type 72 SP is a version that's a little bit more robust, that was designed for use in the tropics. Colors for this mine is green and sand. And the ones that are recovered in a desert, what they're finding on those, what the Chinese did, they just went through, took a bunch of the green ones, and spray painted sand over the top of them, because they find when they remove the fuses, you can still see the telltale green paint underneath where the fuse was located when the mine was spray painted. These mines use the Type 72A fuse which is the same as used on the Type 69, Type 72, and Type 81 low metallic mines. This mine requires between 660 and 815 pounds to set off the fuse and detonate the mine. The mines come 2 mines to a crate with 2 fuses. And reportedly, these mines are able to withstand submersion in water up to a depth of about 4 feet for a decent amount of time. I'm not going to say a really long time, but long enough that they could be put out at a ford, because it's expected an enemy column is going to come through there, and they want to knock out a tank right there in the ford so that they can ambush the enemy force as they're trying to do their river crossings. These mines reportedly only cost about $80 to produce, and I'll go into a reason on that one why the Chinese brag about that. There is no anti-handling devices on this mine. There is no secondary fuse wells, which once again shows, like with the fuse well cap, this is copied of the initial runs of the TM46. Now, according to demining sources, these mines have only been used and located in Libya, China, Bosnia, Congo, Eritrea, Iraq, Sudan, and Uganda. But I need to add 2 countries to this list: Cambodia and also North Korea. The mines have been located in those areas, but are not on the lists from the deminers. According to the Chinese, when I went into their stuff, was translating some of their articles, they say they have exported this mine to about 24 different nations across Africa and the Middle East. Well, if they're going through painting them, covering up the markings, when they're being found by deminers, they could be being misidentified as TM46s when in actuality they're Chinese-made Type 72s. Now, instructions for installation on this. First off, you go through, inspect the mine and inspect the fuse for serviceability. If one or the other does not work, replace it. After everything passes inspection, you're going to go to the area where the mine is going to be emplaced, and you're going to prep that location. So, if you're going to bury it in the ground, the hole is going to be the diameter of the mine. The depth is going to be to the top of the fuse well cap. You will then place the mine inside the hole, remove the fuse well cap, pull out the Type 72A fuse, and it looks like the safety clip is on the bottom half of the fuse down in here. You can kind of see it in this picture up here, which I did not have access to or did not come across when I was looking up for the Type 72 low metallic mine. So you will slide off that safety clip. You will then take the Type 72A fuse, insert it into the fuse well in the mine. You will then replace the fuse well cap and camouflage the mine. It's now armed, ready to go. Now for removal, first thing you're going to do, you're going to find the general area where the mine's supposed to be located, and you're going to check around it for secondary mines, protective, anti-personnel mines, and booby traps to prevent someone from removing the mine. If you come across any, take care of them before you continue on to the Type 72 anti-tank mine. Once the area is clear, you're going to locate the mine, and it's very easy to do because this is a metallic mine. Once you locate the mine, you're going to uncover it. You're going to check the sides and underneath for anti-handling devices. Just because there is not a secondary fuse well does not mean someone has not modified that mine. Reportedly, the ones being recovered in Libya, a very high percentage of those do have anti-handling devices on them that the Libyans modified the mine themselves and attached in there. If an anti-handling device is found, destroy the mine in place. Do not continue with removal. If no anti-handling devices are found, you will unscrew the fuse well cap. Use 2 fingers to remove the Type 72A from the fuse well. You will then, if you have it, slide on the safety clip over the bottom of the fuse. You will then replace the fuse well cap. Use a shovel or preferably a grapnel hook and rope. Pull the mine out of the hole. Clean it up. Turn in the mine and the fuse to the mine dump for later reuse. Now, some interesting things I came across on this mine. I did go to Chinese sources, did translations of some of the articles that were put out by the People's Liberation Army. And the stuff that they say on this mine is hilarious. Prime examples of communist propaganda. Now, according to the People's Liberation Army, this mine was ahead of its time, innovative, groundbreaking when the Chinese came out with it in the early 1970s. They make no mention that this is a copy of a World War II era Soviet mine. And the version that they copied isn't even the improved version. It's the initial production runs. They play up very heavily in the articles on how cheap this mine is. It only costs 80 American dollars. And this mine has cost the West over $200 million in destroyed vehicles and equipment. And according to the People's Liberation Army, these mines have destroyed between 13,000 and 40,000 armored vehicles around the world, including around 300 M1 Abrams tanks when used by the Iraqis. And what's really funny, they show pictures of what they say are Western vehicles destroyed by Type 72 mines. Well, the vehicles that they show are actually, according to the markings on the sides, ones that were given to the Ukrainians. And they show some of the type, quote-unquote, Type 72 mines that were used to destroy those Western vehicles. And those mines are literally Russian TM-62 mics. It didn't even occur to them that, hey, the mine that's being showed in that picture with that vehicle is not the type of mine that they're really playing up in the article, and anyone with half a brain would notice that, hey, this picture is completely different than the mine that they show in the picture by that destroyed vehicle. The Chinese also say that this mine is so advanced, it has multiple internal anti-disturbance devices that as soon as the fuse well cap is put in and the mine is armed, these anti-disturbance devices go active and it cannot be disturbed by anyone without it blowing up in their faces if they try removing the mine from usage. They also say in this article that even now, in 2022, the date of the article, that Western technical intelligence still can't understand how the Chinese came out with such a technologically advanced landmine. Those articles really could be used as prime examples of communist propaganda on taking something that is basic as can be, obsolete, and talk about it's the greatest thing ever, and you know, it can literally bring down bombers from the sky, you know, because it's just so powerful. It makes your head hurt when you read the articles put out by the People's Liberation Army. Now, these mines, I do not believe are in frontline service with the Chinese military anymore. I have a feeling they're more of a reserve mine now, one of those that's designated for emergency wartime use. They do appear to be exporting these quite heavily to the Middle East. They do mention that. So, yeah. It's one to definitely be aware of. The only way you're going to be able to tell that this is a Type 72 and not a Soviet-made TM-46 is the markings, really. And probably the shade of the color of green used on the mines. The Soviets used a lighter shade of green than this. That would be another indicator. And then obviously the fuse. The Soviets used a completely different type of fuse. The Type 72A fuse is made out of plastic. The MD5 fuse, I believe it was, that one was made out of metal. So I have a feeling that the Chinese copied this mine in the 1970s for plausible deniability reasons when they would supply weapons to countries in Africa and the Middle East. So when the stuff was being found by, say, the Israelis or American Special Forces or British Special Forces or French Special Forces, they would come across these mines. If they didn't have Chinese markings on them, they would think, oh, these are being supplied by the Soviets, when in actuality, they were coming from China. And those soldiers in the field, they're not going through, they're not testing the explosive and all that to verify its source. What we would do, and trust, I've done this, you come across a mine and you go over its external features. What does it look like in order to identify it? It's not the soldier's job to go through and say, hey, this actually came from here, from this factory, not from here. That's not our job. That was the job for military intelligence. And most of the time, it really didn't matter to them. So there you go. The Chinese Type 72 metallic anti-tank mine. It is a obsolete World War II design. Obsolete in that even the Soviet Union in the late 1980s said they were obsolete. And they disposed of their versions of this mine, the TM-46s and TMN-46s, before the fall of the Soviet Union. So this thing is obsolete. It is low powered, not a lot of explosive in it, but it is still out there. It is still being manufactured. It is on the international arms black market. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and militia movements, always remember, essayons.